transmission displays. The cluster one, which is in a hooded binnacle and doesn't need to be touchscreen, is a 650 nit display. That's an extremely bright display. The one in the center stack is a 1000 nit display, which we think is the brightest ever put in a car. We wanted it very bright, so even in a convertible or with the roof out and the sun shining in, wanted to make sure that display was readable. To give you an idea of what that means, an iPhone 5 Retina display is 500 nits, so we're twice as bright as that on the center stack. The driver mode selector is our reaction to increasing complexity in the car. You guys know over the years you've had adjustable suspension, you got traction control, you got all these different ways to set up the vehicle. We wanted to try to make that simple and put all those different controls under basically one knob. So we have a driver mode select that does everything from a weather mode, an eco mode, a tour, sport, track mode, and it sets up the whole car. Pretty much everything you see and feel and hear in the car changes when you change these modes. I think we have a description of up to 12 different things can change depending on how you've optioned the car. You get big differences in the cluster display. It actually changes look from tour, sport, and track. Your throttle progression, the way the transmission shifts, the sound of the exhaust. We've got up to 4 valves in the exhaust now. The steering with electronic power steering. If you saw Jim Merrow's presentation, he talked in great detail about the tuning that's going on. It's not subtle changes anymore. These are big time changes. The car really changes character a lot when you flip the switch. If you have magnetic selective ride, you change the feel of the car from being very plush to being tied down, critically damped for sport mode, and then track mode turns into a very hardcore, super highly damped setting. So you can see all these different things can be controlled by this single control. Now if you want to customize it, you can go into menus in the center stack, and if you just want, you know, this particular sound of the exhaust and this particular ride quality and this particular cluster display, if you want to mix and match, you can do all that on your own if you want. But for people who are first getting in the car and want to understand all its capability, we've put it all on one knob. This gives you a look at some of the displays technologies. You know, this is just the cluster going from a tour mode where you've got something where you might be just cruising down the highway and the tach's not moving very much, so you de-emphasize that, and you've got either navigation information up there or album art if you're on the radio, or you can have a bunch of vehicle status things. We've got a kind of a traditional tachometer with a center DIC in sport mode. And then the track mode is patterned after the C6R Racer, kind of displaying information much the same as it is in the race car. Heads-up display, we now have a full-color, high-resolution heads-up display. It also moves with the modes as well, so it can match the cluster, or if you want to have it set up custom, you can do that as well. Other interior details, we have a electronic locking glove box, so if you lock the car, the glove box is locked. We've got hidden storage behind the screen. This is one of the coolest things if you look at the picture to the right. That big 8-inch screen, if you hit a button, that screen drops down completely, revealing 1.5 liters, a big storage compartment behind there. You can hide things in there and nobody can tell it's in there. There's also a USB port in there, so if you want to plug in your iPod, you can tuck it away in there, nobody knows you got it, and it's plugged into the car. So lots of really fun, really nice little details in here. If you look at the car out here, one of my favorite one is the frameless mirror. It's like a floating piece of glass. It's much smaller than the inside rearview mirrors we have, so it blocks less of the forward vision facing forward, and it's just big enough to give you the view out the rear. So very elegant, really cool looking thing. Bigger cup holders. We got a subwoofer in the back with a 9-liter bass box. So if you get the up-level audio behind that rear compartment panel, we actually managed to package a 9-liter bass box. And Bose, who does do this, and did a much better job this time than they've done previously. They've benchmarked a bunch of cars. The audio output for this car is the highest they've ever measured of any car. And not by a little, by quite a lot. You can see the personalized plaque. We have a nice plaque at the base. And if you want, you can actually get your name with the VIN number customized. You can order this right through the dealer and actually be made right here at the museum. Right, is it here at the museum? Or
yeah.
The museum is actually supplied to the plant for this, and you can get your name and the VIN number on your vehicle.
Yeah, so these plaques, I just want to add something out there. We're really kind of proud of as kind of a way, you know, everybody wants to personalize their car, especially if you custom order a car. And the nice thing about it, if you do the personalized plaque or a museum delivery, you get that, and it really benefits the National Corvette Museum and want to do something that would help the museum for the motorsports park and things like that. So those kind of options will go to help the National Corvette Museum.
Okay, so check out the interior. It's really, really nice, a huge improvement in the car. I'd like to talk a little bit about powertrain, although many of these details have been shared previously. Here's our preliminary torque curve. I think everybody's heard the technology. We're moving to direct injection, variable valve timing, and then you get active fuel management, which is another term for cylinder deactivation. This engine has a huge amount of low-end torque. We've been talking about that a lot. You can see on the graph to the right about 50 foot-pounds increase between 2,000 and 4,000 RPM. I can tell you when you drive the car, it makes the car feel tremendously responsive and more powerful than the increase in horsepower is. The car just feels like it's super responsive. Next slide. It actually has more torque in a lot of the areas than today's 7-liter engine. So here's the torque curve comparing to some of our competitors. You see there's the Porsche 911, there's a BMW 8-cylinder, even the Ferrari 458. Even though it spins way out there, it doesn't produce nearly as much torque as this LT1. We're still a little way. I got a lot of questions about when you're going to announce final horsepower. We're getting close to that. We haven't finished the witness certification for that, but it probably won't be too long now before that work is completed. We've talked a lot about the 7-speed, going to a 7-speed manual transmission. The thing that makes the 7-speed worthwhile is that it's an absolute riot to drive. And the main reason is active rev matching. And we've got a system where when you first start the car, it's not on, just like a traditional manual transmission. But you can see we're using the switches on the steering wheel to turn that rev match on and off. And a lot of time, I'm telling you, you're going to want to turn it on because it's really fun. It's really cool. When you turn it on, it'll do the downshift blips for you, so the downshifts are seamless. It'll also make sure on upshifts, no matter how you shift it, usually it's pretty easy to get a smooth upshift, but this will make sure everyone is glassy smooth. And the way we did it is a little different than our competitors. We actually put a sensor right in the shifter itself. It's right at the base of the shifter. It's called a 3-dimensional Hall effect sensor. Got a patent on it, and it can sense even very small motions of the shifters, and it can kind of predict which gate you're headed to before you get there, and so it starts the rev matching ahead of time. And so what you end up doing is you drive this car, if you like to drive a manual, and with 7 speeds to choose from, there's a lot of speeds, and so sometimes you might like to say, well, am I going to go down 1 gear or 2 gears? You can actually sort of test them out. You can very quickly just move the shifter a little bit in one direction, and the engine will jump to the speed that it would be if you let the clutch up. You try another gear, and it'll jump to that speed. So you can kind of test them out all in just like a fraction of a second. You can just very quickly move the gear shifter around, and the engine makes such great sounds. Now it really sounds great that I end up playing the shifter like a musical instrument. So you end up, you're going along, you're maybe coming to a corner, you step on the clutch, and you're trying to decide, okay, where am I going to downshift? And just with small motions of your wrist, you don't do anything with the throttle, the engine's blipping and it sounds fantastic. You get some overrun burble. It sounds like you're driving on a racetrack and all you're doing is coasting along with your foot on the clutch. So it's really a cool feature. We found that once people get used to it, they turn it on a lot of the time. Sometimes they're wanting it on and off in fast sequence. Even for certain shifts they might want it on. So we put it right on the steering wheel, so it's easy access. You can turn it on or off whenever you want. So we have a 7-speed manual transmission, dual mass flywheel, which helps a lot for shift quality, both in terms of engagement of the clutch, but also reduces workload on the synchronizer, so the car shifts really well. So while many of our competitors are moving away from traditional manual transmissions, we're reinforcing our commitment to it and doing the best one we think's ever been done. Also available is the 6-speed automatic. I get the question all the time, why didn't you do a DCT? Well, there is no DCT that fits in this package and take the torque of this engine, or to be honest, is compatible with the cylinder deactivation. The AFM, the DCTs are not particularly friendly to 4-cylinder operation, so even if we could find one that fit in here, it would be a huge challenge. And you get way more fuel economy out of cylinder deactivation than you do out of a DCT.
You know, one thing I just want to add, I've been hearing some questions on the cylinder activation or the eco mode. In the manual transmission, you have to be in eco mode for that to be functioning. So if you want the V8 all the time, just pick one of the other modes other than eco mode. And then on the 6-speed paddle shift, if you're in the manual paddle shift mode, it'll always be V8 all the time.
Yes, thank you, Harlan. In terms of the body structure, this is one area where if you look at the car from a distance, you might think, oh, it's a body structure, it's very similar, just maybe a few modifications from the aluminum structure that we have in the Z06 and ZR1. Nothing could be farther from the truth. This is a ground-up, all-new body structure. It doesn't have a single shared part. It uses the latest technology. We learned a lot doing the aluminum structures for Z06 and ZR1. We've learned a lot by benchmarking Audi and others who use aluminum structures. Our aluminum partners brought in all sorts of new technology. So this frame incorporates a lot of technology that just didn't even exist the last time we were doing an aluminum structure. So things like hollow castings, high pressure die castings. You can see we've got a whole mosaic of different kinds. It's all aluminum, but it's all different kinds of aluminum throughout the vehicle. Some of the stuff is really aerospace quality, super high strength, 7000 series aluminum to make it absolutely as light as it possibly can be. We saved, actually this chart is a little bit old, we saved a little over 100 pounds on the body structure, and it's almost 60% stiffer than today's structure. So what that means is a convertible on the Stingray with the top down, if you could take it and twist the whole body, is actually stiffer than the Z06 and ZR1 with their roofs in. So you got a solid permanent roof in, and you're still about 20% stiffer than that car, even with a car with no roof at all. So it's a huge improvement in the stiffness to weight ratio of this body structure. We are building it in Bowling Green as we speak. The body shop is up and complete, and we're basically finalizing all the kind of new age technologies, laser welding, flow drilled screws, the bonding, and you know, there's a lot of adhesive in the process. So there's a whole bunch of new technology that Bowling Green is really learning to basically build this as a watch. It's extremely precise. When we eventually get tours up and running, I hope people can go over there and watch this high-tech facility because it's really awesome. This shows you a long look back. This is going all the way back to C4 to give you an idea of, I was talking about stiffness to weight ratio. So the whole purpose of the body structure is to make the car stiff and use as little mass as possible. So if you go back to C4, you see high mass, low stiffness. The 5th generation car was a real paradigm breaker, you know, with the hydroform rails end to end. We made a big deal out of that because it was a big deal. And you can see a huge improvement in stiffness. A small mass savings, not a huge mass savings, but enormous improvement in stiffness. The 6th generation, we refined that, focused mostly on mass reduction. So you can see not a big improvement in stiffness, but a little improvement in mass. And then you can see this time around, big improvement in stiffness and a big improvement in mass. So a big improvement in both of the most important things. Also, we focused on mass reduction all over the car, all around, everywhere we could find it. So we've got the first time we're using carbon panels on the standard Stingray. The hood and the roof, standard equipment, carbon fiber, 100% carbon. Then if you look under the skin, you'll see carbon glass hybrids. So this is a mixture of glass and carbon in a new kind of resin system that takes mass and makes the panels underneath the skin stiffer. So looking for mass everywhere we can get it to make cars as light as possible. So this is, I've gotten this question many times. What does the car weigh? What does the car weigh? Because we talked a lot about all these mass reduction things, but there's also a lot of things we've done that add mass in. For example, the engine, 16 kilos. You don't add variable valve timing, direct injection, AFM. You don't add all that content without that hardware weighing something. So to put that technology into the vehicle added 16 kilos. We're making engine oil cooling standard on the car. The reason for that is that we use that oil to perform a lot of those functions. Variable valve timing is one of them. The AFM actuation is used using the hydraulic pressure of the oil. So we're injecting more heat to the oil, so we made the oil cooler standard. I mentioned the dual mass clutch has a lot of benefits. One of the negatives is that it's heavier than a traditional single plate clutch. We had to make the torque tube, the big connection piece between the trans and diff in the back and the engine up front. We actually had to go the other way from what we usually do. We had to go from aluminum to steel to stiffen that up to make the whole driveline stiffer so that when you're running in 4-cylinder mode, you don't feel the vibration in the car. You're probably wondering, well, why don't you just keep the car light and get rid of the cylinder deactivation? Well, the cylinder deactivation is by far the biggest single fuel enabler in the car. You could take hundreds of pounds out of the car and still not get as much fuel economy savings as you do out of the, I see why they're laughing now. Yeah, this is always a good thing when we get a software upgrade in the middle of a presentation. Okay, I mentioned the exhaust valves. We got additional valves in the exhaust.
Okay.
I'm sure it's going to work out well. Okay. When you put more power in a car, you necessarily add weight. So more power, more torque means like the standard differential that we have today would not have stood up behind this engine. So we actually had to do an all-new differential. We're doing an electronic differential as well, but the gear sizing is like today's Z06 and ZR1. So we had to add some mass there. The brakes are a huge improvement. Instead of sliding calipers, we've got fixed calipers. We've got very substantial brakes, even on the standard car. That added some mass. Talked about the upgraded interior. You don't get fully wrapped, beautiful interiors. You don't get stiffer, higher performing seats for nothing. That added some mass. And then there's new regulators, new regulations all around the car, new crash and safety regs that come in. That requires content or some amount of added body structure. And then lots more infotainment kind of content, a lot of feature functionality. And then we put the battery in the back on all cars. The weight distribution of this car is actually rear biased. It's not 50-50, it's actually biased somewhat to the rear. And then we actually gave you a little bit bigger fuel tank, even though the fuel economy is better. So a lot of ads. We've worked really hard. You can see in all of the material choices, we worked really hard to offset those. So you can see we're coming in like we predicted before when I've been asked, between today's base car and today's Grand Sport. So lighter than a Grand Sport. So a little under 1,500 kilos or a little under 3,300 pounds. Even though some people might say, well, God, you put all that technology in there, why isn't it even lighter? I'd invite you to look at other V8 sports cars, especially ones that are convertibles. You recall that we sell nothing but convertibles, even the coupe is really convertible. Take a look at where those cars are mass-wise. They'd typically be 500 pounds, maybe even more, heavier than this. So this is still a very light vehicle. We're also, for the first time, many of our competitors don't quote the curb weight, they quote the dry weight. So that's not, there's no fuel in it, they don't have washer fluid in it, they take a lot of the fluids out, so that's the dry weight. And our dry weight is 3160, though that might be more comparable to what you see quoted from what other manufacturers. Okay, chassis. How many people were in the chassis, the Camaro review yesterday? Okay, quite a few. So I'm just going to whip through this chassis stuff because He and Mike Bailey did an awesome job yesterday going through this content. I want to make sure we save some time for questions. So basically the chassis is an evolution of the SLA suspension we've been refining for generations. You see it almost universally on race cars. That's why we have it, same reasons. Many of our competitors do not have SLA suspensions. We've been refining it decade after decade, trying to take mass out, improve the stiffness, improve the precision of the whole chassis. One thing that I'm really happy with is even though we made the wheelbase a little longer, the turn circle is actually shorter, 2 feet shorter, and that makes it a lot more convenient when you're doing a U-turn on a 2-lane road or just parking. Makes the car feel a lot more nimble. I mentioned the ELSD. This is kind of a game changer for the car, and once we get media and once you all get in the car and get to experience it in a performance setting, this changes everything. It has a huge impact on the way the vehicle handles, the way it feels. An open differential, I think Jim was talking about, you can make a car oversteer or understeer just based on the way you actuate the electronic limited slip differential. This comes standard with the Z51 package. It's tied into all the electronic safety systems on the car. One of the great things is that it stabilizes the car without needing to intervene with a traditional stability system where you use brakes. So it's not slowing you down, it's stabilizing the car, but it's not slowing you down. I think when you get out there on the track, you're absolutely going to love this. And this also is tied into the driver mode select that I talked about, so the way it behaves is totally customized by that. I mentioned the brakes. Brakes are a big upgrade. Brembo is now across the board our brake supplier, and we have fixed calipers across the board. Big upgrades in not just the caliper pad, but the rotors themselves. We have a co-cast rotor on Z51, so it's a separate center casting versus the friction surface. Helps save a lot of weight in comparison to a single casting. We've gone away from the cross-drilled rotors. If you look at race cars, you see almost nobody uses cross-drilled anymore. That creates stress risers in the surface of the braking. Everybody's got slots now. If you look at the C6R, you'll see C-shaped slots in their rotors, and you'll see very similar slots in this car on Z51. I mentioned Z51 a bunch of times. This is going to be a fantastic value for people who like performance. You get dry sump when you check the box for Z51. You get performance ratios in the transmission. You get that electronic diff. You get bigger shocks. You can get magnetic ride control if you want it, which really takes everything all the way to the top. You get bigger brakes, larger diameter wheels with tires that are custom engineered for the Z51. It's really a heck of a deal, and that's not even mentioning the spoiler that I was talking about earlier, the aerodynamic aid that you need to help the car get the car planted on the track. So we've talked about the performance of the car, and I've talked about the challenge we had to make a car that's as visually arresting as a Grand Sport is today, as efficient or more efficient than the narrow body from 2005 when we introduced the 6th generation car, and also make the performance better. And so we've announced previously, and we're going to have more news on this shortly, but we're saying we're 0 to 60 under 4 seconds, and I have to tell you we're solidly under 4 seconds. The brakes are fantastic. The stopping distance, you know, in today's car, in many magazine articles we've come close to or have set the production car record for brake distance. We expect this to be at least as good. We'll be solidly 1G cornering. I've talked about all the aerodynamics right, coming straight off the racetrack. It's not race inspired, it's the actual race strategies being applied to the car. And we know, Jamero was talking about it, we're quite a bit faster than the Grand Sport on the track, and that's pretty darn good for the rest of the capability of this vehicle. We introduced the convertible in Geneva. So the car is basically engineered as a convertible to begin with. It's a coupe, but you can remove the roof. So very quickly we introduced the convertible in Europe. Got another round of magazine covers. People were very happy to see the quick introduction of the convertible. Just like the C6 and the C5, it was designed to be a convertible from the beginning, so there's no added structural reinforcements or anything. So the structure's no heavier with a convertible than it is with a coupe. We're really proud of that. We're almost unique in the world in that respect. We're going to a full one-button top, so no latch on the header, just a simple push of a button, and the top can lower or raise in about 20 seconds. You can also drive it at speed, so if you're at a light, you decide you want to put the top down, the light turns green, you don't have people honking at you, you can drive away and the top will continue moving. So that's a really nice feature to have. We have a little animation of this. It's a very different operation than what we've had for generations on our convertible. You can see the tonneau slides up and over horizontal, parallel to the deck lid, and then the top slides underneath. Much more sophisticated mechanism, much more robust. The fit and finishes on the car, top up, top down, much improved. And you can see by not putting the tonneau the way it opens up today, it's not a big air catcher, and that's one of the reasons we can make the top operate while in motion. You can actually lower the top with your key fob remotely, so we also have on automatic transmission cars remote start like many GM cars do. So as Harlan has said, Corvette people like to do things fast, like to get going fast. So as you're walking up to your car, you can start it, you can have the top down. It's running and ready to go when you get there.
And if it starts raining, you can put it right back on again.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we're really proud of the way the convertible looks. Top up and top down looks quite distinctive. The top up appearance is extremely tailored. You can't read the body structure through the top. It's a very elegant, very smooth appearance. And all the performance stuff we've been talking about all the way through, check the box. You know, it's available on the convertible as well. We're going to have a wind deflector as we do today. I think it'll be a little nicer piece. It's going to be fully transparent and you will be able to operate the top with it in place. You won't have to remove it. As today we have a trunk partition, and we have about a quarter difference, so about 3 months difference between the launch date for the coupe and the convertible. So fourth quarter of this year we start to ship in North America.
Yeah, we got 4 top colors. The car we have on display, the Night Race blue car, has the blue top on it. We had it up and we put it down during Ryan's presentation so everybody could see it. So we got the blue top, we have black, we have gray, and we have a Kalahari top that really goes well with that interior. This is the car with the Kalahari interior on display at Geneva. And this was the Night Race blue car that we have here, and it was also at New York with the brownstone interior. One of the things I want to talk about is, okay, everybody's excited. You know, I've been getting a lot of questions. You know, how do I order? What should I get? What are these packages? My dealer got this thing, and I'm trying to figure it out. Can you help explain it to me? Well, we really try to make it easier. This time we've gone to just there's 3 levels, and basically if you're familiar with the Corvette of 2013 or what we've been doing for a number of years, you're going from 4 to 3. Basically every level got an upgrade. So the 1LT, we call it the purist. It is the least expensive, but it is really for somebody too we were talking to that want the lightest car available as well. The 2LT is really the package we think will be the most popular. It has a lot of the comfort and convenience and luxury features that I think most people typically buy. And the 3LT package is really the ultimate Corvette, you know, sports car luxury with the leather-wrapped interior. There's more of a more color in the interior as well. The instrument panel doors are wrapped in leather. And they're also the brownstone interior we've been showing. That's exclusive to 3LT. It's really a showpiece. Yeah. It's really our feature interior we really wanted to do to push it. And also the seats have a Napa leather, which is just as a higher grade of leather, really in the ultimate for sports cars. I'll go back over this a little bit more in depth. Now, one of the things about the 1LT car, it has a lot of things you may not expect standard in the car. we've talked about, you have 3 seat color options. You do get the full 8-inch displays that Taj talked about are standard in the car. Talk about power 8-way seats, both sides, and tilt and telescoping wheel are standard. Keyless access, which we had for a while. The 7-speed manual with active rev match and launch control is standard. We have a rear vision camera on all Corvette Stingrays as well, taking advantage of that center display. We also have